Good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Experts. Our guest today is Dena Oberst from Gable Tax Group. I hope I pronounced your name, the last name,
Okay, it's
close
Dena
enough?
Oberst. It's all
Okay,
good. It's a horrible last name. I get it.
all right. I kill all of them, so I'm an equal opportunity offender. So there you go. I'm going to start this conversation off with the fact that with a little bit of a backstory. I had a client, and we were working on their Shopify store. And I haven't dealt with taxes in a long time, but I know that's something you really should take care of. And I said, I'm pretty sure that we need to figure out this sales tax thing in California so that we don't get ourselves in trouble, right? And I had some questions as to whether or not, the sales tax was whether on origin, on destination, and all that. And I asked a bunch of people. And some people referred me to the reg, which if you've ever read the reg, just is not helpful at all, right? So that for those of you who referred me to the reg, yeah, go away. So I reached out and maybe Mark Henkin, but I spoke to some folks and they recommended Dena. And so I shot Dena an email, and not only did she respond, but she responded with the answer to what I needed, very concise, very precise, easy to read, understandable. And I'm like, oh my God, where have you been my whole life? Because tax is complicated. So with that, Dena, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your prompt response for the problems that people were just running around, giving me the runaround about. So I appreciate that very much. Why is sales tax so complicated?
I think people have been asking that for the whole time. I've been doing this for 31 years, and they're like, Dena, when are they going to simplify this? When? And I really don't think that's ever going to happen, to be honest. For 31 years, I've been doing this thinking I have to find a new profession, and it just has never happened. It just keeps getting more complicated, right? So you and I talked a little bit about how I was able to easily give you an answer, and I'm just going to just reiterate that really quickly. I don't like talking reg speak. I don't like saying laws and regulations. That's what an auditor does. That comes from a different world. I think as a business owner like yourself, you just need a real answer, and you need someone to kind of cut through all of that mumbo jumbo. And since we at Gable Tax Group, we have 21 sales tax professionals here, we cut through all of that so that we can help you understand the law so that you can make the right decision for your company. So why is it so complicated? Well, each state has their own rules. Some states have cities that have their own rules that go against the state. There are 87,000 different sales tax rates. The products could be exempt in some states and taxable in others. And of course, you've heard of the Wayfair decision that happened in 2018, which made it actually way more complicated for most business owners.
And I remember back in the day, folks kind of just ignored this, or they used a one solution and figured, we'll sort it all out later. Why do you not recommend that?
Well, like one solution, just like whether you tax it all or you don't tax it,
or you just come up with one rate and just ignore, everything, just that type of thing. Because back in the day, we used to, what we used to do is, we would base it on the jurisdictions that you had in common. So if I was in California selling to a person in San Francisco and being in San Francisco, we would charge city, county, and state. But if I was sending it to LA, I would only charge, the only thing we had in common was state, and we'd only charge the state tax. But that's
right.
changed.
Well, that has changed. And speaking of California, since you're in California, I'm in California. California also has different rules. I think you and I mentioned it. It's the modified origin, right? A portion of the tax is based on where you reside, and a portion is where the customer resides. But because of that Wayfair decision that happened in 2018, and let's just talk about that because that's why it impacts the decision that you and I had talked about in California. So in 2018, South Dakota went after Wayfair and said, you have sufficient presence in our state in South Dakota, even though they had no physical presence in South Dakota, so that you had enough revenue here that you should be charging sales tax. Of course, Wayfair and others, they weren't the only ones in the lawsuit, actually. So no, I don't. And we're going to fall back on the U.S. Supreme Court decision that protected that. Well, they pushed it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court heard the case. They overturned their previous decision, which was the Quill decision that protected a state from taxing an out-of-state company, an out-of-state company. And what happened after that? So 2018, June 21st, 2018, Supreme Court squashes Quill. All the states start passing economic nexus laws, which is based on revenue, and now have to collect sales tax. Well, how does that fit in with your California situation? Well, isn't it a little unfair if you're an out-of-state business having to collect a different rate than an in-state business? Because that's historically what's happened, right? If you were in state, you had a modified origin sales tax calculation. If you were an out-of-state business, you were shipping goods into California, you collected it on the destination. So there was a different tax if it was interstate and different tax if it was intrastate. So every sales tax, every state that has a sales tax has different rules. Some of them have different tax returns. So they would have a seller's use tax return and a sales tax return. So it made it very, very complicated. And I think with that passing of the economic nexus legislation that occurred in 2018 and forward, they're trying to level the playing field, right? And make it easier in terms of trying to calculate tax, always based on the destination of the customer when there's goods shipped. Different when you're a service business, but.
So what that means
that's
is
why
that
it changed for your decision based on when you first inquired with me. Yeah.
So what that means is I'm obligated to file a tax return in every jurisdiction in which I do business. Yes or no?
Well, it depends. Don't you love that? It depends. So if you have physical
presence. It depends is why we have to hire you, because it's the depends.
It's the depends. It's why you need a sales tax expert. Yeah, on speed dial. The reason why it depends is there's a lot of factors. So for a business to have a sales tax responsibility to collect, they have to have nexus. The nexus means connection with the state. The connection could be the physical presence. It could be through an office, employees, trade show activity, warehouse locations, third-party logistics. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that would give you physical presence in the state. It could be a traveling salesman, a guy that travels from state to state soliciting business. So that is one criteria. That's only one nexus criteria. It's physical presence. That's the one that's been around the longest. But they also have click-through nexus, right? You have a shopping cart on the phone and I can buy stuff. So the states were passing click-through nexus saying, hey, you have a cookie that gets put on the little phone. So if you have a customer that's in my state, you have a sales tax responsibility. You have affiliate nexus, affiliate entities. Remember back in the days, the Barnes & Noble brick and mortar versus barnesandnoble.com, they got caught because of affiliate nexus. So there's different kinds of nexus or connection with the state, which would give your business a sales tax responsibility. And of course, the newest one is the economic nexus. That's revenue-based, $100,000 or more in some states, or as low as 200 transactions. So if you sold 200 cups in a state, you could have a sales tax collection responsibility.
I'd actually like to go back and point out one of the ones that you mentioned, because I think that people will overlook this, and that's the 3PL. So if you're outsourcing your fulfillment to a different jurisdiction, you could be creating this nexus as a result.
Absolutely. So that gives you the physical presence because you own inventory. So even to back that up, so you know, if you were working with Amazon and Amazon was your fulfillment, so you did an FBA with Amazon, right? You're shipping goods to them, they're distributing them to the warehouses all over the country. Sellers actually had physical presence in all those Amazon warehouses. Didn't even know it, didn't have control of it, right? And so they were getting audited by the states. The states were coming in and saying, you have to be registered and you need to collect tax. You have physical presence, inventory in a warehouse. A lot of these businesses don't know that, right? Sellers on Amazon and these other marketplace facilitators aren't big enough to know that. And so the states quickly realized they were not going to get the money from them, from the sellers. And so they passed another law called a marketplace facilitator, right? And now forced the Amazon, Etsy's, and eBay's and Walmart's of the world and any other marketplace facilitator as it's defined to collect the tax on behalf of the seller. But in most cases, people that even sell on Amazon also have their own website, like what you and I were talking about, and they have a different 3PL or their own warehouse where they're selling goods. So they have to take that in consideration. If they own any product or inventory in a state, even if it's at a third-party warehouse, they have physical nexus and should be required to collect sales tax on any transactions they have in that state.
And be assured that Amazon will pass that on to you.
Well, Amazon has increased, I'm sure, the cost of doing business with them because they're now in the tax compliance business, right? So they have to collect tax everywhere now, pretty much everywhere.
You know, we had an e-commerce business a long time ago, and I remember when this was 10 years ago, and I remember when this was coming down. I'm like, this is going to be a nightmare. I'm like, this, just trying to do, like, you would, we have to hire folks like you because you could be potentially filing hundreds of tax returns every month.
Yeah, we actually have e-commerce clients that file in upwards of 75 jurisdictions a month because they're doing business in all 47 taxing states and then all the locals, right? Colorado has locally administered jurisdictions. You have to file a separate tax return. Same with Louisiana. There are several states that have local filings. So it does add up for a business to have that many tax returns on a monthly basis.
And what about, things like Shopify where they will calculate the tax for you? Can I rely on that?
So Shopify is probably one of the most common e-commerce platforms that we see. And Shopify has a bunch of different sales tax apps, I'll call it, that it integrates with. You've probably heard of Avalara. Avalara tends to get a lot of name recognition. Most people have heard of it. That is a sales tax rate system that integrates with Shopify. Shopify also has other sales tax rate systems within Shopify that can calculate tax. But that's just one part of the problem, right? So one thing is once you determine you have Nexus and you need to register and collect tax, you need to have a tax rate software. But if you sell a type of good that could be exempt, now you need a tax engine. You need something that says, oh, I'm selling clothing, for example, and there are some states that exempt clothing, or some states that maybe the first $175 is exempt and the amount after is taxed at the normal rate. You can't just do that by having sales tax rate in your e-commerce platform. You need something behind it that says, if then this, right? If in Massachusetts and it's clothing, is it exempt or taxable? And that's why you need to end up licensing a third party to calculate tax. I'm not an advocate of Avalara, but it's something most of your listeners have probably heard of.
And in addition to being exempt, there's options where it's just a different rate, like, because what, like produce or things like that it's not exempt, but it's a different rate.
Right. So food has a different rate. Software has a different rate. Prosthetic devices have different rates. Medicines, like there's a whole host of things that are taxed differently. So for example, for software as a service in Connecticut, if it's a sold B2B, it's taxed at 1%. But if it's business to consumer, it's full rate, the full tax rate. So it does get complicated depending on what you're selling. Tangible goods like coffee mugs or cups or something are pretty fairly straightforward, but other things like clothing, digital goods, software as a service, software in general. And then here in California, you even have just issues like food, hot prepared food, cold food, to-go food, eaten in-house food. It has a lot of different rules depending on how it's consumed and what you're selling.
And we've been talking about sales tax. What about excise tax? How do we have to deal with that?
Well, excise tax is definitely not my area of expertise.
Okay.
Definitely.
Doesn't say that on the banner behind you, so I should avoid that.
What? Yeah, we don't work with excise tax. Excise tax tends to be more at the federal level. And so a lot of fuel, excise tax fuel. There's just a lot of different areas. I know enough to be dangerous, but it's definitely not my
and it tends to be the producer, not the end, retailer.
Right. Yeah. So we work a lot with the indirect tax. Now we do have other states that have like a business and occupation tax or gross receipts tax that get added usually in the sales tax department. So like Washington has a B&O tax that's on gross revenue that's reported on the sales tax return. Delaware also has a gross receipts tax. And there are some other states. Ohio has a CAT tax, which is an activity tax, kind of like really more like a gross receipts income tax more than an excise tax.
And when do we typically need to engage you? Like, how big do we need to be? Do I need, how many jurisdictions should I, if I'm only selling in California, do I need to hire Gable or not? I know the answer is yes, but
It's a great question because it really just depends. We do get some local businesses here in California that just have questions. I just talked to a guy this morning who has a couple coffee shops, and he was actually specifically asking about, is coffee taxable, whether it's to go or consumed in house. California has this 80-80 rule, so it gets a little complicated. Now, would he hire me to file his sales tax return? Probably not, because it's fairly straightforward, a California sales tax return. But if he decides he's going to grow and ship coffee beans all across the US and it's going to have, millions of dollars of revenue, he's probably going to have a sales tax collection out of state. So I would say there's really no client that's not ideal as long as they need help. We do, as you know, offer free consultations. We do telephone calls. We don't charge for our time on the phone to answer questions so that a business can make the right decision. But the best client, obviously, for us is someone that has probably around $10 million of revenue and they ship all over the country because they've probably tripped the economic nexus, right? The 100,000 or more in most states. And now they have a bigger problem because the states are auditing, right? So it's been a couple of years since the Wayfair decision, since 2018, and the states are already auditing. There's some hot states right now, Illinois being one of them. They're auditing a lot of businesses based on the economic nexus.
And do you charge more when they're in the middle of an audit?
No.
You should.
Well,
Because if they waited that long, they deserve that.
Let's put it this way. You can either, pay like a fixed rate for someone to do your tax returns, or you could pay a consulting hourly rate to clean it up. So yes, we do get involved with clients helping with their audit defense. There are a lot of mitigation strategies to try to reduce that exposure. But yeah, we really would rather have the consultation while they're small. So if you have companies right now that are still just growing, have the conversation now. Get the free consultation from us. Get the free nexus analysis from us so that you're prepared when you get bigger and you're not caught. Because, our motto is we want to help businesses increase profit through proper compliance. So what does that mean? It means let's give you enough information so that you're not paying out of pocket, which decreases your profit because you didn't know and you didn't make the right decisions. So the best thing to do is to get a free nexus analysis, get some free advice, and then when reach the threshold, and then you can put the systems in place. But yeah, hourly audit defense is definitely not where you want to spend your money. I'm happy to help. My team is happy to help in that area. But really the goal is let's start at the ground. Let's figure out where you have sales tax nexus, help you get registered, get your systems in place, potentially file your sales tax returns if you don't have someone in-house to do that, and get you clean from the get-go. It's a pass-through tax, right? Your customer's supposed to pay for it. You're just responsible for collecting it.
Right, and reporting it.
And reporting it, yes, and the administrative costs. But a lot of the states do have what they call a vendor discount or timely filing discount. And so they try to help offset the administrative costs of filing those tax returns. So if you collected, $10,000 in tax, you might have $100 that you can get back from the state to help pay for the service of filing it. So.
And if folks are interested in this free consultation, how do they find you?
Well, you can always find us on the web, obviously, at gabletaxgroup.com. There's a link right there where you can click and make an appointment with me and schedule a consultation. My calendar is open. It gives you a Zoom invite link and set up a call and talk about your business model and start the process.
And we'll make it a point to add that to below so that folks can look for it.
Yeah, sure. Sales tax guru, Gable tax group, Dena Oberst. You can Google any of those things and you'll find me somehow, some way.
There you go.
We show up on that list.
We very much appreciate your time. We very much appreciate your insights, because, any one of us who's ever dealt with retail, whether it's shipping or brick and mortar, sales tax is a nightmare. And, as I tell my clients, you don't want to get it wrong. You can screw up a lot of things. You can screw up the marketing, you can screw up a lot of things. Make sure you get the sales tax right. So,
Yes. Well, and I will just say one thing, Mike, before you go. Most
absolutely.
people will tell me, well, Dena, I talked to my accountant. And I'm like, yes, I understand, but your accountant is usually certified in one state. If you're a CPA, you're a California CPA, you're an Arizona CPA, you're not a multi-state CPA. So the CPAs don't know much outside of their own state, not because they, it's just not their expertise. So that's really where we fit. So we work alongside the CPA. So if your clients have an accountant and they need help helping their clients with sales tax, that's where we fit in, because we provide that expertise on the sales tax side, but CPAs don't want to touch it.
Okay, so we have nothing against CPAs, but they need a little help.
Well, they're doing income tax, right? I mean, they're doing
Right.
what they do best. We don't do income tax. We don't do excise tax. We don't help companies form their business entities and things like that. We just help with sales tax. And so, yeah, the CPAs are great. They're good. They're a great somebody. If you have a business, you need your CPA. But if you have sales tax, you need a sales tax guru.
Dena, one more time, give me the website again.
GableTaxGroup.com.
Thank
So
you.
it's GABLE.
Thank you
Right
very
on that.
much. It's behind you. Yeah, exactly. In case they missed that the whole time.
Yeah.
Again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your help before, and we hope that lots of folks will take advantage of it and stay out of trouble.
Great. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.